this link, right?
No, that's just the link to his channel.
Okay, well here's the
All
his
right.
My wife's talking to me at the same time.
No, you're good. You're good. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are live. And it's funny, this is actually episode number 40. We've got like 200 videos, but this is episode number 40 with a guest. And I want to welcome Freedom Inc., man. Thanks for jumping on with me.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
Hell yeah, man. It's cool. Watched a bunch of your videos and kind of saw some alignment between our channels, and I was like, hell yeah. So, tell everyone a little bit about yourself. I know some of your people are here too, but let them know kind of who you are and just a little bit about you.
Man, I don't even know what to order. I'm not good at telling you about me. I mean, I'm just an average guy, man. I'm an average guy with a family that just wants to be left alone. I don't want anything I didn't earn. I just want to be left alone. And more than that, I want you to be left alone. I want people to understand that, we've been lied to a lot. We've been sold the illusion of freedom, and realistically, our lives have been stolen from us, and people don't want to recognize it. And I know that sounds crazy. I'll get into it shortly, but I just, it's just like spreading the message of liberty, man. We're literally the last generation of men that will even have the illusion of freedom. And if we don't fix what's going on in this country, when we're gone, it's over. The men 25 years to 40 to 55, once that generation of men is gone, it's over for freedom in this country.
Yeah, we say the same thing. That's the new enemy. The military age male that's armed, that's likely to rebel. They're the number one target. And they want our kids. Yeah. So when did you start your channel on YouTube?
I think I started about 3 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, something like that. And when I started it, I just had a goal, man. I just my initial goal was that we can't really fix what's going on. We can try, but in the meantime, I want to create a community of people that are like-minded, because they created a system where alone you're not going to win. You're not.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if they have to, whether you do anything wrong or commit a crime, or the crime in their own words, not mine. It doesn't matter. They will manufacture one. I mean, look at Justin from Auto Key Cards.
Yeah.
He was a sponsor of my channel. He got arrested for manufacturing machine guns. Using that logic for his product, I can go out on the Ford F-350 and draw a lightning link on it, and I have a machine gun. Like, it makes no sense.
It's crazy.
But it's not right. It's not about what makes sense. It's about, the force of the government coming down upon you when you throw a finger up to it.
Yeah.
That's what that's about.
Yeah. It's funny too, because like when we're talking so often, like we're kind of stuck in this world where we use certain words that we wouldn't use or we don't want to use, but we have to use because of the programming of the general populace, like ghost gun or like just any bullshit like that, right? Like so I'm gonna start like specifically selecting different words so I don't have to use their bullshit, their little propaganda points.
Right. Well, they've taken words that are that have it. They've had a definition for the hundreds of years or the 100 years they've been commonly used in the English language. Take racism as an example. If you look at the word racism today, the first word that is in that definition, if you Google it or wherever, even look at the Webster's dictionary, is prejudice. They don't have a semicolon and then go on to the rest of the definition. If you look at pre-1992 Webster's dictionary, the term prejudice wasn't in the definition of the word racism. So why did they change it? Well, look at me. I'm a 40-year-old white male. I have white kids. I've been married to 2 white wives. I've only dated white women. Therefore, I'm prejudiced and racist by their own definition.
You're
so everybody's prejudiced. Huh?
You're so
right. Well, but I mean, that's what it boils down to. I mean, that's why,
like
people call racism today, if you call somebody a name, it's racism. If you do this or that, it's racism. When the fact is that racism has a specific meaning, or racist, or whatever. If I call somebody a name, that's not racist. It's prejudiced. It's ignorant, probably, but it's not racism. Right?
Yeah. But that's another buzzword that they use, right?
Right. Right. 100%. Yeah. Ghost gun's another one they use. Like they just make these words up, assault weapon.
Yeah.
You know, like I got everything in my garage is an assault. I got a pile of assault hammers over there. Like
Yeah.
it makes no sense. Like it's an inanimate object. The person's what's dangerous. And what do you do about that becomes the question. And we can't worry about that person. We have to prepare ourselves to be able to defend ourselves against that person if that person decides to act out on us. But we can't assume that person is going to do something, because when we make the assumption that person is going to do something, government then legally takes away their rights. Their words, not mine. We've now opened the door up for somebody to be standing behind us and decide why we're too dangerous to have our rights, just like we was talking about a minute ago.
Yeah.
It's a dangerous
That's how
game.
my cats behave. They're asking girls for feet pics, and
That's okay. I can handle it.
Oh, is that you, Liberty Chick?
Yes, that's me.
Oh, hell yeah, that's what's up. I totally forgot too. My bad. Let me say what's up to some of the people here in the chat. Space Texan, Gerchop, Kimball, what's up? Bill Blasco, Sport Brand, what's up, brother? One of my favorite mods. Talked to Matt today, Matt Telhart. He's taking a little social media break, so y'all don't worry. He's all good. We got some new folks that I can only assume are from your channel. I've heard you on your streams talking to like TLR and Liberty Chick, which obviously now I realize is wifey.
Yeah.
And
she's co-host.
Nice. T Black, Matt, what's up, guys? Welcome. What's up, Joe Morris, Opie, all you guys. John Rice, what's up, brother? Armitage. Okay, sorry, I had to say what's up to my people real quick.
No, you're good, man.
But yeah, it's interesting. Another thing we talked about too was that you always hear people talking about the Constitution, right? And what are the only two amendments that you hear people talking about?
First and second.
That's it, because that's all they fucking know.
Yep. Well, that's all they've been told about.
Yeah.
It's willful ignorance. Like people will spend hours and hours on YouTube when they can they could get online and get a Constitution for free, or they could learn something, but they fall into repeating those talking points or catch terms or whatever. My Second Amendment rights. Like I can't stand it when people say my Second Amendment rights, because like the Second Amendment's a restriction on government, right? So it grants you nothing.
Yeah.
So you don't have Second Amendment rights. You have the right to keep and bear arms, and then our restriction on government is the Second Amendment. Yeah. But if we say it enough, and here's like what this will cause. If we say it enough, and then like my kids believe that they have Second Amendment rights, when they repeal the Second Amendment, and they're going to eventually. As crazy as that sounds, they eventually will. They will believe that right will no longer exist because the Second Amendment no longer exists.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's it's a hole to dive in, especially when and like you said, they only know about the First and Second Amendment. If you mention anything else to them, they have no clue, which has a lot to do with why we see what's happening today.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think that's what compels myself and people like you and others to, spread your message far and wide.
Right.
Give people a different perspective.
It's hard to, though, because a lot of people don't want to believe, and not. Have you ever heard that? I don't know if it's a saying. I don't want to say it's a saying. I forget the word for it, but it's harder to convince someone they've been conned than it was to con them to begin with.
Yeah, I've heard something similar to that.
Right. It's like the truest thing in the world, man. Because people today, you can. We was talking about this a minute ago about when it comes to the right to keep and bear arms. I will see people talk about my God-given rights, my Second Amendment rights, and then I'll say something to them, and I'll say, okay, you're a hardcore pro right to keep and bear arms person. Here's a true statement. Explain it. And you can explain the statement I'm going to make using only the Constitution. I've said this 5,000 times on my channel. Like even the men on death row still have the right to keep and bear arms. So when you say that to the average person, they're like, well, no, he don't. He's in jail. They immediately default to the gun.
Yeah.
And that's not what I said. I didn't say he could have a gun in prison. What I said was he has the right to keep and bear arms, because they lack the knowledge of what our Constitution is and what it says. They don't understand that we have allowed people in the community to be prosecuted through the Fifth Amendment. The Fifth Amendment says no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. It also says the same thing in the 14th Amendment, but we'll get to that later. Notice it doesn't say rights, though. Life, liberty, property, and rights have 4 very different meanings. So when that person is on death row, what has been restricted? Their liberty to utilize their properties was been restricted. The right still remains. But if they can convince us that they can take a right from somebody if they're in jail, or they can convince us that they can create a law to keep these scary people over here from having a firearm, name the list of people now, then we've opened the door, and we've allowed for somebody to point the finger at us and say, well, this person doesn't need a firearm, or we've taken their right. But people will argue with you when you explain that to them. Like, I just want you to be 100% free and live your life and be able to exercise your natural rights in any way you want. They will argue with you that you are wrong. And in doing so, what they're saying is that they only have privileges. If you believe that government can take a right from people through legislation, then you believe you only have privileges.
Yeah. I think they had this perspective of, you always hear people say, like, this law is only going to affect law-abiding citizens, right? Like those are the only individuals that are allowed to maintain that, that freedom, which is bullshit.
Right. Well, I'm sorry to, I'll forgive me if I don't say it, if I want to say it, but my son was murdered, and we were just talking about that in 2019, November 23rd, 2019. The guy that killed him had the right to keep and bear arms before, during killing my son, and after. He didn't have the right to kill my son. It's 2 separate issues, but we've been convinced through 200 years of indoctrination that it's the same issue. And to solve that issue, you need to take the gun. He was going to kill my son no matter what. you know what I mean? Like, I'm not laughing. I'm laughing because people are stupid. They think that, it's the mindset of the killer. If the guy was truly evil and he truly wanted to kill somebody, he's going to do it.
Yeah. That's some deep shit, though, man. That's like an ultimate level of belief in freedom, and I won't say forgiveness necessarily, but that belief in freedom and liberty that even a person like that committed that type of violation still has that right. That's because people believe that the scary guy, the felon, the guy that had 2 consecutive misdemeanors within a 36-month time frame, those people no longer have that freedom.
Right. Well, what they don't understand is that everything they're fighting against is to keep them from being that person. You hear the people say, we're going to be felons overnight. Well, first of all, no, you're not. You have to get caught to be a felon. But if you agree with the laws that are in place now that say, this list of people, and it's a list now, it's not just the guy who hacked up the family that went and did 30 years and got out of prison. I mean, in some states, you can get a misdemeanor, like Pennsylvania. It carries, some of their misdemeanors carry 2 years. If you could potentially serve more than 365 days, according to federal law, you are under disability, meaning you can't have firearms.
Yeah.
And, the list goes on. People for DUIs, domestic abusers, felons, the mentally ill is a good one. Who decides who's mentally ill? What, the doctors that went through the far left, liberal, had the far left liberal professors before they became doctors? They're going to decide who's mentally ill or not. Like, it makes no sense. Right.
Yeah.
It makes no sense whatsoever. But they buy into it because it's if you hear that something, if you tell a lie enough times, it becomes truth. And that's what it's all around us, and people are unwilling to accept the fact that they have been lied to. They believe what they've been told, and they only know what they've been told back to the First and the Second Amendment. And like, if you ask somebody, what's the most important amendment in the Bill of Rights? They'll say the Second Amendment. Why do they say that?
Because it protects all the other ones.
Right.
Yeah.
The truth is that it's probably the Ninth Amendment. It's probably the most important amendment. Basically says that the government can't dictate our rights, right? So we have more rights than what's just enumerated in the Bill of Rights.
Yeah.
And it's like, this could be a 10-hour conversation. How did it happen? Why? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. The little pocket Constitution is like the go-to trick there, man. That's a study guide that never gets old.
Right. Well, people have to understand how it works first. So we see things like the NFA, right?
Yeah.
The federal government creates a law that is now binding through every state. Well, the states are sovereign, right? So since you have your Constitution there, read Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17, and see what it says about the federal government's jurisdiction.
Sorry, I was reading a comment there. I missed that. Say that one more time.
Read Article 1. I'm sorry. Read Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. So the federal government now creates national sweeping laws left and right that everybody fears. That clause talks about the federal government's jurisdiction.
You said Section 8 in Article 1?
Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17.
To make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States or in any department or officer thereof.
That's not section, or that's not Clause 17.
Yeah, they're not numbered. I literally counted it out. You talking about to exercise?
No, I got it right here. I don't know it verbatim, but I can read. I'll find it real quick and read it to you. So the federal government only has certain jurisdiction, right? And it's lands that have been legally purchased by the federal government, giving it the ability to exercise the powers that we have given it, meaning certain military powers, presidential powers, government seat. Hold on 1 second. I'm almost there. My bad. To exercise executive legislation in all cases whatsoever over such district not exceeding 10 miles square as may, by I can't say it, cession of particular states in the acceptance of Congress become the seat of government of the United States. So that means Washington, D.C. is what it means today.
Yeah.
And to exercise, here's the important part, and to exercise like authority over all places purchased by the consent of the legislature of the state in which the state shall be the erection of forts, magazines, arsenals, dockyards, and other needful buildings. What does that mean? That means that the federal government only has jurisdiction over lands that it has legally purchased from the states, right? So they can't create a national sweeping law that can be enforced in the state. That's why we have state legislatures. If the federal government could create national sweeping laws the way they do today and the way we've been led to believe that they have the constitutional authority to, we'd be the federal state of America. There'd be no reason for state borders or state governments. We have sovereign states. If you look at the War of Northern Aggression, which is now called the Civil War. It wasn't a civil war. That was the southern states saying that we are sovereign states. We have the right to make our own state laws. Like, I get that slavery was a part of it. I'm not saying it wasn't, but it wasn't the main reason. It was what we're seeing today. The anti-federalist Constitution was drafted in 1787, signed in 1788. The anti-federalists in Virginia wasn't going to sign the Constitution. They weren't going to join the Union because they feared the Constitution gave the federal government too much power, and they wanted a Bill of Rights. Their main concern in the Anti-Federalist papers, if you read the Anti-Federalist, was that a federal government that is overreaching, that rules over the states. The very thing we're seeing happening today, it's been happening for the last 100 years. The federal government creating these national sweeping laws. We're supposed to be a country of very few laws, maximum individual liberty, minimum government, and it's been turned around, for a lot of reasons.
It's crazy. You always constantly hear about federal laws and then each individual state law, which I don't personally have a problem with that. What I have a problem with is each state determining their own laws, right? The federal sweeping laws and the abuse of executive orders, I definitely have a problem with.
Well, so what's an executive order? The executive orders constitutionally only apply to executive personnel. But again, we've been led to believe that this person that is only meant to represent the country, be the chief of the military, that has a few other powers granted by the people, can now rule over the country through executive order. So what does that mean? It means that you now select a dictator every 4 years. That's what it means.
Yeah.
The power, the presidential office has been given so much power now just through what people believe. So if you consent to something, if you know that something is illegitimate, or take an example, what's going on now with the DOJ and everybody wanting you to write the ATF or whatever, whoever they want you to write for the next 90 days.
Yeah.
If you write them, what you are doing, you are legitimizing that illegitimate act, because writing them is consent. You saying, "Oh, please don't take my pistol braces," is a form of consent, right?
Yeah.
And people don't get that. We have our sovereign states. I live in Ohio. The Ohio legislature makes Ohio's laws, which really we're not supposed to have laws like we do today, man. And people they can't grasp onto that, a nation with no restrictive laws. I forget where it says it, but we're supposed to have the privileges and immunities in one state as we do the many. How do you do that? Well, you do it through the Supreme Court. If the state creates a law that's unconstitutional, the Supreme Court strikes it down. We're only supposed to have laws mainly for due process purposes. So we know murder's bad, right? Just because murder is illegal, if it wasn't, doesn't mean I'm going to go out and murder people. You have moral people and immoral people.
Yeah.
So we've made murder illegal for the defendant. So he has due process, and that's mainly what the laws they're supposed to mirror natural law, but they've gotten so far out of hand, man. Now it's just, we've been, in our lifetimes, we've been sold the illusion of freedom. Being free to do as you're told. It's called slavery.
Yeah.
Well, it is 100%. It is. If you look back at the 1840s, the slaves were free to do as they're told. Well, so are we. So I guess the question then becomes, why are we free to do what we're told? Well, the police forces. So if you look at the Constitution for what it is, it's our restriction on government. 100% is a restrictive document. Where did we allow for policing forces? A lot of people will go to Article 2, Section 3. Which it's a stupid argument, because that's talking about presidential authorities. So it's really a stupid argument, but there's a lot of what they point to.
I don't think the Constitution actually mentions anything specifically about police.
It doesn't.
Yeah.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. They just fought the British policing forces. It actually does in a way. If you look at Article 1, Section 8, I think it's Clause 11 or 12. Where they're talking about standing armies. So what the police forces were in those days were standing armies. So what's a standing army? It is a government force embedded in a community to execute the rule of said government, right? It's a police force is what a standing army is. If you look at the history of the word police, it wasn't widely used in the English language until about the turn of the century. So you're talking, late 1790s, early 1800s. So when the Constitution was drafted, the word police didn't exist. Then it's hard to explain. It will take a while, but we can go through the whole thing. And you can see how we've been lied to. And the end goal, we all know what the end goal was. The founders told us the end game was complete tyranny. The government would control you, rule over you, make you a slave, whatever you want to call it. And they told us this. They told us if we didn't keep the government in check, it would do this. So how do we do that? Well, we keep the government in check by enforcing the Constitution. The Constitution is each individual's restriction on government in a collective document. So the Second Amendment is your restriction on government. It's also my restriction on government. It's also Jim Bob down the street's restriction on government. But collectively, it's our restriction on government. So, we're talking about the felon a minute ago. The felon didn't give the government permission to to take his rights away. You can't give rights away. And what they've done today is they, people use the term all the time that they're taking our rights, or the phrase, or they are something, add in whatever, our rights. A right can't be taken. What they're actually doing, and people don't recognize it, is they're instilling so much fear in you that you refuse to exercise your rights.
Yeah.
And they do that through policing forces. The redcoats were the British policing forces of the day. The men that founded the country that we praise shot them in the face. Those same men were criminals. They were felons. They were terrorists by today's terms. But the same people that want to praise those guys will then say, that felon don't have his rights or whatever. It's a bunch of bogus bullshit, and the end game is control, and people buy into it.
What's worse is when, let's say someone commits a crime, gets charged with a felony, and then does their time, gets out, and gets their shit expunged. What do they typically say? They say they got their rights restored.
Right. 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 And it's stupid. So if your rights can be restored, then your rights can be taken. Then that means they're not rights. They're privileges.
Yeah.
And it's buying into it, man. It's buying into the game. So I guess you have to start with the first thing you probably got to do is convince people they've been lied to. Can you look up the New Hampshire House bill?
Yeah.
Show it on the screen.
Yeah. Which House bill was it?
638 from 2013. So this is a New Hampshire House bill from the New Hampshire legislature from 2013. The purpose of this bill was to recognize the original 13th Amendment. So you ask what the original 13th Amendment was. It's going to be when you read it, you're like, wait a second here. I was never told there was an original 13th Amendment. Well, none of us were. The 12th Amendment took 4 months for the federal government to even print. So it became a printing issue. And then Lincoln came into office. So if you look back at history, Lincoln was accused of stealing the 1860 election. Lincoln was also a lawyer. So what did the original 13th Amendment do? It restricted people of nobility from holding government positions. So what's a position of nobility? Well, you take a lawyer as an example. They have a bar accreditation. What is that? What does bar stand for? British Accredited Regency. Wait a second. British. What does that have to do with the United States? So you have to look back through history and see why why that happened. Well, the original 13th Amendment isn't recognized because Lincoln stole the election with an agenda, and it had little to do with slavery. And even Lincoln, in his own words, said if he could keep the Union whole without freeing one slave, he would have. Like that's in letters from Lincoln saying that. He's not the greatest president ever. He didn't free one slave. He in fact made us all slaves through the 13th and 14th Amendments that we know of. But look at I don't know if you can look it up. I think you can actually if you Google the original 13th Amendment. I think there's some articles on it.
So would this be really quickly? It may be a little too small for you to see on the screen, or for anyone to see in chat too. But this House Bill 638, and this is the New Hampshire House Bill, an act recognizing the original 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution. And that's just jaw-dropping, baffling. Now, in the Constitution, the 13th Amendment says the district constituting the seat of government of the United States shall appoint in such manner as the Congress may direct a number of electors of president and vice president equal to the whole number of senators and representatives in Congress, excuse me, to which the district would be entitled if it were a state, but in no event more than the least populous state. They shall be in addition to those appointed by the, and then it says the 22nd, hold on. So hold on, was that the original 13th Amendment?
No, I don't think so.
Let me pull it
It
up.
talks about nobility. Yeah, I can't pull it up on my phone, and I don't know verbatim. I wish I did.
No,
My brain don't work that way.
See, my pocket constitution is failing me. This is supposed to be written verbatim with all.
Well, it's right, but it's not there. It was deleted from history, and there was a reason for it. So, if you want to talk about the reason for it, that was the 13th Amendment, I believe you just read. But read the 14th Amendment too, and then we'll go into this and how this happened and why it happened.
So this is the original 13th Amendment.
Okay.
It states neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except
No.
as a
That's our 13th Amendment now.
Okay.
That's the 13th Amendment we know of now. So, right. Here, I'll read it off real quick. I got it right in front of my face.
Okay.
Neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishable for a crime. Can't see.
Sorry.
Whereof the party shall have been duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any place subject to their jurisdiction. Section 2, Congress shall have power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. So what does that really mean? What does that really do? It gives government the power to make you a slave, is what it does. So look at, if you don't believe me, look at prison, just as an example. Like, the prisoners are a great place to look at. So you get sentenced to, in Ohio, for example, if you go to prison, I got a buddy that's getting out in August. You have to work. You have to have a job. They force you to do things like where he's at. They make the license plates, stop signs, and shit like that. He makes whatever it is, 17 cents an hour or whatever. People believe that the 13th and 14th Amendments. So the 14th Amendment says all persons born or naturalized in the United States are subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are citizens of the United States and of the state wherein they reside. No state shall make or enforce any law which shall abridge the privileges. Hold on, let me turn the page. Sorry, I got one hand. I'm almost one-handed.
You're good.
Shall abridge the privileges and immunities of the citizens of the United States, nor shall any state deprive any persons of life, liberty, or property without the process of law, nor deny to any person within its jurisdiction the equal protection of the laws. So you can actually Google this and find it, but look up the definition of citizen. I'll tell you what it is. It's a subject that is has allegiance to a government. That's what the definition of citizen is. So they cloak this making you a slave, and out of this came things like income taxes. Or what's slavery? Theft of labor. When you boil it down to its smallest molecule, it's theft of labor. So at what percentage of theft of your labor are you a slave? Is it 1%? Is it 0.5%? Is it 50%? Is it 100%? In my mind, it's the smallest percentage whatsoever. 1 penny a month is, being extorted from me is slavery.
Yeah.
Right. So the original 13th Amendment made it to where those who, see if you can look it up, Chris,
Right.
The original 13th Amendment, it says something about nobility. So people that have or recognized ability from other countries, unless recognized by Congress, cannot hold office. That's the one we know now. So what that means is, for example, lawyers couldn't hold office under
Right here.
Okay. Okay, well, she found it. My wife found it. Let me see if I can read it real quick. Let me find it. I'm sorry, man. I should have been more prepared. I didn't, but I knew what I was going to talk about.
It's just a conversation. It's all good.
Right. This is an article, so there was a this article, I read this article before. It's about the group in Utah that was suing to have the original 13th Amendment recognized. It was missing. It says it was missing from the historical. Hold on, I don't want to lie to you. But it talks about nobility is what it talks about, that people with titles of nobility can't hold office unless Congress approves it or whatever. So what is that? Like a lawyer has a title of nobility, so they have a bar accreditation. Knights, as an example, would be a title of nobility. So if you look at Congress today, if you look at our whole federal government today, what kind of person holds every office? Just about lawyers, right? Abraham Lincoln was a lawyer. If you go back and look at the possibility that Lincoln stole the 1860 election, you then have to ask why. You know, we think we play the game in days and weeks and months. So we're thinking about paying our rent, how we're going to pay our rent next month, or how we're going to fix our car next week. The people that are literally trying to enslave you are thinking in the next 100 years, the next 150 years. So this stuff, you know, the experiment failed almost immediately in this country. You know, George Washington said that, you know, even I could be a tyrant. And then he turned out to be a tyrant with the Whiskey Rebellion. You know, he led the military against the Whiskey Rebellion. Then you had the policing forces that came in the late 1830s. You know, for the first 60 years of this country, there was no policing forces. Then you have the War of Northern Aggression, where the South tried to succeed. You know, the South was trying to do the same thing that the founding fathers did. They just wanted to succeed peacefully. And then you have what happened at Fort Sumter, which was, come to find out, was, you know, Abraham Lincoln drawing the first fire from the South, so you had a reason to go to war with them. You know, we've been led into this path of control. We've been funneled into it over, you know, the last 240 years. So it's, how do we get out of it? What's the real problem? I challenge anybody for as long as this video is up on the internet to give me one problem that you have with government where there is not a badge involved between you and government, meaning you have a problem with taxation. So the IRS, right? You have a problem with land taxes. So the IRS, okay? So what's more important than what Lincoln did or anything before that was the Organic Act of 1871. So Lincoln had a debt to Britain that had to be paid after the Civil War. I don't want to lie to you here. I said Britain, maybe in France, but regardless, it doesn't matter. You can look this up. So look up you don't look it up now because it'll take you 2 months to read. The Organic Act of 1871. So the federal government literally sold the land known as Washington, D.C. to a company in Scotland. Like, this is all, you can look this up. It's in the Library of Congress. It's like 100% truth. So this is how the country became a corporation. The corporation that purchased that land to settle the debt from the Civil War that the Union had occurred, that company's name was the United States of America. Does that make sense?
Crazy.
Does that make sense, though, what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So there was a company in Scotland called the United States of America, and then they bought Washington, D.C.
It was funny because someone said probably 10 minutes ago that Washington, D.C. was owned by a company in Scotland. That's nuts.
It is.
So
so they became a corporation. What do corporations do? They make money, right? Then they influence the states to incorporate, which they did. Now all this money in taxation gets funneled to the federal government, then gets funneled to who? Well, we have the Federal Reserve, which is owned by who? The Rothschilds, the royal family, right?
Yeah.
It's a private thing. Our government will go in and say, I need to borrow $1 billion and I will pay you back 1,500. Well, that currency is just a representation of money. It's not real money. So real money is like gold, something of value. It's just a representation of it. So this private company says, okay, and they hit the button, they print off $1 billion, and they hand it to the federal government for whatever reason, to be paid back with interest. So the end game is for whoever's really pulling the strings, not only in this country, but in the world, to gain wealth until the end of mankind, right? So how do they do that? I was listening to one of your videos where you had Dugan Ashley on, when Dugan was still on here, and he was talking about something similar. But we see the end game happening now. So the only way that I can think that this could even be possible. So right now, you and I can have a private transaction nobody would ever know about. But if we go to a digital currency, like, I don't know, Bitcoin as an example, where every transaction is, public record.
Yeah.
If we go to a social credit score like China has, and then somebody can dictate if we can or cannot make these purchases from private people or from companies. Who makes those decisions? Well, the same person that makes those decisions is going to charge you for making that decision. So whether or not they let you make this purchase or not doesn't matter. They're going to take their 2% or whatever it is, and you can't stop them. You don't have physical currency. You don't have, it's not physical. It's all behind the keyboard. So the person that controls the keyboard controls your money. So how do you gain wealth until the end of mankind? You control everybody's money.
Yeah. And it's funny because like all these people are going crazy over Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, thinking that like that's their escape. But to this day, no one has been able to show me who created Bitcoin. Right. So I can only guess who is responsible for that, just as much as like, when we were talking before, I mentioned, Richard Rothschild took out a patent in 2015 for COVID-19 testing, right? Like they profit off the problem and the challenges and the solution. Hold on real quick. So Bacon, what's up, brother? The goddamn Bacon, thanks for the 545, like the different caliber. All forms of government and politics has a different flavor of slavery. Nothing more, nothing less. My bad to Liberty Chick, by the way. Also, I have fat fingers. Okay.
Hey, well, that's not totally true, man. So like we have to agree that government has a place, right? And it does.
Hey, dude, I'm so sorry. My little one woke up. Keep going. I'll be like literally 1 minute and chat with you. So I'll be right back.
All right, that's cool, man. So government has a place, man. We can't say that we have no government, because there's forces in this world that's bigger than you and I can handle or amass on our own to defeat. The problem we have is that we don't enforce our Constitution. Why don't we enforce it? So why don't we enforce the Second Amendment? A lot of people will point to those damn Democrats or those damn Republicans. Man, they're all on the same team. But they've divided like that, or tended to divide it anyway, to divide us. So if they can keep you and I fighting each other, then we can't team together to fight them. But they've created policing forces, which are completely unconstitutional, to protect them in the end. At one time, all those positions were voluntary positions. That's why the Constitution says the Congress has to meet at least one day a year. It wasn't supposed to be something to be made a career out of, so you can become a multimillionaire in 2 years through backdoor deals that are completely legal when you made the laws. But we need government, but we need to enforce our restrictions on government. We're born free people, just like a dog, a cat, a bird, anything like that. If it's born, you're born free. But they create the police forces. Okay, and here I'm going to give you kind of a quick rundown how it happened. They created policing forces because people thought that it made them safer. The arguments between Boston and New York, who started the first police forces. Regardless, they started the same way, from street gangs. The Thin Blue Line is literally a street gang, and they protected the community they lived in against other street gangs, while extorting the people who lived in their community. So same thing you see now. I'll protect you, but you're going to pay me. And that has morphed into what we see today. And those same people protect those in government who seek to violate your rights and control you. They protect them from having to face repercussions for their actions. So if the policing forces didn't exist, do you think that the shit would be going on today that's going on today? Hell no, it wouldn't be. Because then people know when they will go back to their homes, they'd have to answer to their neighbors, which is how it's supposed to be. The core to every problem we have in this country, in my opinion, and I don't see, I haven't heard a great argument against it, is the police forces. Whether you're talking about the local cop, at this point, the county sheriffs. The sheriff in each county or parish is a constitutional position, but it's not a law enforcement position. That sheriff was supposed to have no arresting powers, merely on their own. They had to have the community involved to arrest anyone. But that's kind of, the quick rundown of why you see things happening the way they are today. If we didn't have government, then you have complete chaos. And you could call me King Nick because I'm not going to be ruled by anybody. And that's like sick. That's like sick to say, I know, but you have to think if you remove government, then you create a power vacuum. So then it becomes the man with the most money, with the biggest army, runs everything. And government was supposed to keep that from happening. We failed because we don't enforce the Constitution. So why don't we enforce the Constitution? Well, a lot of people don't know first, they don't even know what it is. If you ask them what it is, they'll say, I don't know, the founding documents. It's our restriction on government that we are supposed to enforce on our government, but we can't. Why can't you enforce it? Because the police. You go try to arrest Nancy Pelosi for all of her freaking crimes to humanity. Watch what happens to your ass. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, I was just kind of laughing, like, yeah, really, like, how do you think that would go, going and trying to arrest those that have been proven to commit crimes, like, Hillary, right? Like, it's crazy.
Right. Well, I mean, and you have to look at what really happened. Like I said, we're thinking of months and weeks. They're playing with decades and centuries and millennia. And people don't want to believe that, and I didn't believe it for a long time. For years and years and years, I told people that would tell me this country's a corporation. I'd be like, you're a fool. You're an idiot. Well, come to find out it was me. You don't know what you don't know. And anything's believable today, though. What happens in this country. But they create, like I said, when he was gone, all those positions in government besides the president was voluntary positions in the beginning. So they took the position as a voluntary. That's why the Constitution says that Congress has to meet at least one day a year. How many days a year are they in session now? 10 months out of the year?
Damn.
It's creating laws, having all these commissions and all these damn whatever, deciding all kinds of bullshit and trying to rule over the country. It's completely ass backwards. But we have no way to, how do I say this? There's no way to enforce the Constitution today. You got a problem with government. How do we stop it? Well, we can vote our way out of it. Did you see how that worked out the last election?
Yeah.
Like it just doesn't. You can't vote out of this. But the Constitution was our restriction on government. It's meant to be enforced by us. Why can't we enforce it?
Yeah, it's a joke, man. It's funny. Tech said the policing forces are the standing army the founders warned us about.
1000% they are. And people argue that they're not. The ones that say that they're not, I will say, please explain to me why they call themselves officers. Where else do you hear that term?
Right underneath that, what checkpoint says. After tech tie.
What did checkpoint say after tech tie? I can't see it.
Yeah.
Repeating the same mistakes only makes it worse for our grandchildren.
Yes.
Oh, it says, she's pulling it up for me. We have.
Oh, I see.
Imagine.
Hold on, he can read it. He got pulled up.
We have imagine the projected path for any system that we envision replacing the current one. How would you make a system that cannot be abused by one or a few people like we have now?
Well, first people have to know what freedom is, man. And once you understand what freedom is, then you can understand what you have to enforce. Anybody that tries to violate your rights or restrict your liberty or restrict your freedom, they have to face repercussions for their actions. So how do you make that happen? Well, in a civil society, you arrest them, you put them on trial in a common law court. But like it's today, things are so far gone, man. I honestly don't believe there's any saving. We don't, we have the police forces. Okay, so let me give you the rundown with this real quick. I'm sorry. So you can look at the FBI statistics. The lowest 20% of the population, when you're talking about how much money they make, so economics, commit 80% of the crime. So you're talking about mainly full-blown, lifelong welfare recipients, right? They commit 80% of all crime. So we're extorted for our money to ensure the survival of these people that won't ensure their own survival, so they can commit 80% of the crime that then justifies the cops to the society, right? To our society. Abolish the police forces is what we need to do. And people don't like to hear that. And as soon as I say that, they automatically say, well, you're a Marxist. Dude, I was saying that long before BLM ever said it. The police are the truest enemy to freedom and individual rights, man. And they are. You know, if you look back through history, every atrocity committed by government to the society that it governed was committed at the hands of that government's law enforcement. Since the beginning of governments.
It's interesting because like when we originally had that conversation, you know, my first thought was like, I support police, like you know, like I feel for them, right? The same way as we had said, like you know, protecting the little old lady, right? Like you know, the police are there to protect those that can't protect themselves. Well, it's that little bit of like mercy in me that feels for the like that their freedom and like that responsibility is on them, and truly a community should protect each other, you
right.
know, not the responsibility of 911 or the police. So
right.
It's you put a different perspective, you know.
So when the little old lady's getting robbed, why what's the first thing, you know? I don't know if you watched the video the other day where a dude overdosed and I had to run to my house and get Narcan. A lot of people would have helped that dude just for fear of the police.
Yeah.
Right. And that's the same thing you see happening today with the little old lady. You know, if the little old lady is a productive member in her community, I mean, doesn't mean she has to work. It just means, you know, she's a decent human being. The community will take care of her. You know, like people think that when you start talking about abolishing the police, people look at the world like it would be as it is today. Well, first of all, it would be years of turmoil, years of blood and death, and it would be shitty. I probably wouldn't live through it. My kids probably wouldn't live through it. My lineage would probably be gone from the chain forever. But whoever lived through it could actually be free, you know, and the founders did the same thing. You know, they didn't know they were going to win the revolution. They went into it, you know, we believe in freedom. We're going to fight for this. And the consequences are a far second to the principle. So let's remove the police forces. What's the first thing that happens? People stop paying taxes. And when I say policing forces, I'm talking about everything from your local cop all the way to the feds, with the exception of a constitutional sheriff in each county and parish.
Like you're saying, like all NGOs, all non-governmental organizations, like ATF, everyone. Okay.
Anybody that carries a badge today, with the exception of one sheriff in each county or parish in the country. First thing people will stop doing is paying taxes. So you're not going to pay your federal income taxes, state income taxes. The welfare state's going to fall over the next year or two. There'll be a lot of death. Those people will be starving. They're going to have two options: get to working, grow your own food. Three options: grow your own food, or die, starve to death. Well, I guess there's four options. They could try to steal food, and then they're going to probably die doing it. But fast forward when the welfare state completely fails, and whatever happens to those people happens. So now we live in a society where you know, you have to work to eat. You have to probably, you know, grow your own food. People, it would be different. It would be like it originally was, you know. If, you know, back when the first 60 years of the country, there was no police forces. The little old lady didn't get robbed because, number one, there was probably nobody in the community that was immoral in that manner. Number two, because the community protected her. You know, she was the one that hemmed clothes or made clothes or help people with gardening, or just the knowledge she has is valuable to the community. So the community will protect her. But today that can't happen, because the first thing everybody fears is, I mean, just look at carrying. You carry a gun to protect yourself, or if you do, I don't know if you do, it doesn't matter. Whoever does, they carry a gun to protect yourself. Now you have things like USSCA, where you got to have insurance to carry a gun, because you know what I mean. Like, it makes no sense. If somebody, you know, in my mind, you know, there's a level of violence that deserves deadly force, you know, as a reaction. So there's not. I mean, if somebody comes after you wanting to fist fight you, do you pull out a gun and shoot them? No. I mean, I wouldn't think so. But even if somebody pulls a gun on you today, their first thought is going to jail. That mom of that kid that overdosed, she was worried about her kid going to jail. Like, we're sitting there, I'm like, what do I do to fix the problem? And the first thing she says is, well, the police come. When I said call the paramedics, so that's the first thing I suggested when I first got out of the car and walked over to their car, and the dude's in the back seat freaking blue. Like, hey, you need to call paramedics. She's like, well, the police will come. And it didn't really hit me until I got back in my car what she was saying. She wasn't worried about the police coming for her. She was worried about the police coming and doing something to him. And you see that now. Like, it's about control, man, and more control. If you remember, how old are you?
30, mid-30s.
Okay.
I want you, real quick though, I want you to also tell that story as well, but go ahead, continue.
What story?
The story about the kid, because a lot of my viewers don't know about that.
Oh, okay. Well, she was worried about, the police arresting her kid. If you remember when you were a kid, I don't know if you ever had to call the ambulance, but I'm 40 years old. So when I was a kid, we called the ambulance showed up. Yeah. Now the police show up every single time. I don't care what it is for. You call the ambulance, you call the paramedics, the police are going to show up. You call the fire department, the police are going to show up. Well, they do that because every time they show up, they put a little check on the board. So next year, when it comes to appropriations time to get more money, they can say, look, we had 3,471 runs last year. We're up 6,000, or 600 runs from the year before. We need new cars. That's why your local police department has all new cars and shit. That's why they have
reps and body armor.
Right. They don't need to be there. They come to create a crime. You know what I mean? Do I believe that drugs are good? Hell no, I don't. I believe if you want to kill yourself, you have the authority to do that. Yes. Heroin's not the problem. The problem is if they go rob people in order to buy their heroin. It's two separate issues. We've been led to believe it's one issue, like most things. But it's, we don't need the police for that. We can do that ourselves. Somebody had texted me when all that was going on. They said, I forget how they worded it exactly, but basically said, they didn't say I was stupid, but that's what they were saying. You're stupid for taking somebody that was overdosed to your house because, well, in my mind, that I know I have the fix at my house. They don't want to call the cop. They don't want to call the paramedics because they're afraid of the police for whatever reason. None of my business. I had the fix at my house. So, I was 90 seconds away from my house. We drove to my house. They pulled the driveway behind me. I ran in and got the Narcan and I gave it to him. Then I told them to take him to the paramedics because when I opened the door up at my house, he was literally blue. Like the dude was blue. He hadn't probably breathed since we left the store. And I picked him up, and he took one big gasp of breath. I laid him back down, and, kept shaking him until he started breathing again. So I wanted to be breathing in when I administered the Narcan through his nostrils.
Yeah.
And I told her, I'm like, look, he's deep into this. You need to get him paramedics. And she mentioned the cops again. I'm like, look, lady, he can die, or what if he goes to jail? You know what I mean? Like, pick your poison here. I mean, personally, personally,
he may die.
Right.
Or he may go to jail. So just for for all my viewers that don't know the story. Are you? Oh, sorry. I thought somebody was saying peace. So kind of tell everyone what happened that night. And by the way, so I keep Narcan, naloxone in my car and in my med kit and in the house. Just because you don't know. We've ran into a bunch of people overdosing at gas stations or whatever, and people don't know you can get it for free. Go to your family doctor and tell them you need a prescription of Narcan. They will write you a prescription. Your insurance will pay for it. Yeah. You can go to CVS and you can buy it over the counter. It's like $100 or something, but you can do it. So I was doing a live stream. I was ranting about the police, as a matter of fact, and just like they do no good. Everybody talks about these good cops, but you never see these good cops anywhere. They're always on vacation or off duty that day or some shit. And then I hear somebody saying something. I was sitting at the store parking lot. I'm sorry. My wife was inside and I was still raining. And a car pulled up next to me and I kept hearing them talk. And I heard some lady talking about wake up, and she was screaming it. So I got out to see what was going on, if the person was okay. And it was her son, I guess. And he was overdosing in the backseat of the car. I told her to call the paramedics. She said that she was worried about the cops. And when I went back and listened to it again, you can hear him the guy talking about emptying his pockets and throwing everything out and calling the paramedics, the man that was there.
But I had Narcan at my house, so instead of running to my house to get the Narcan to take it back to them, I said, "Hey, just follow me to my house," because if they would have called the paramedics, it would have took longer for the paramedics to get there and to administer the Narcan than it would have to get to my house and me administer it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It would have been taken longer to call the paramedics initially.
His organs would have been failing by then.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So we got into my house.
People think, sorry, just really quickly, a lot of people think when someone overdoses that it is the actual overdose of the drug that kills them. They don't understand that it's the lack of breathing that shuts down your organs. That so it's a misunderstood thing. But yeah, please.
So opiate overdose is respiratory. Is what it affects your you stop breathing. Is what basically happens, and your organs fail. So we got to my house and I ran inside. I didn't say anything to him. I ran inside. I grabbed the Narcan. I ran back outside and I opened the door up. They were getting out of the car at the same time, and like the kid was blue. I mean, mid 20s, had a fucking mask on. Sorry, I didn't mean to cuss, but
no, you're good.
And like they had no clue what to do. They feared the cops so badly they were going to let this kid die in their back seat. I think it was her son, and so I set him up. And when I set him up, if you keep people moving around when they're overdosing, you can usually get them to gasp for air, right?
Yeah.
If you land, they're just going to sit there and not breathe, and they're going to die. So I set him up, and he took a couple of breaths. He got flushed again, got the blue out of him, and then in order to make sure that I wanted to make sure that Narcan got going in the system, so I laid him down and kept shaking him in the seat. I closed his mouth, so when he had to breathe through his nose was his only option. So as soon as he started to take a breath in, I gave him one dose. The next breath gave him the second dose. And people don't know your body will only metabolize 3 doses of Narcan, 3 2-milligram doses.
Yeah, 6 milligrams.
Yeah. So after 6 milligrams, they won't administer anymore. But then, I probably gave him maybe 45 seconds, and it takes a few minutes for the nasal Narcan, to really take effect. But I told him, I said, you need to go back to there, and just, she was worried about the cops again. I was like, look, lady, you have 2 options: call the paramedics. He might go to jail, or die. Let him die. I mean, that's on you. I did all I could here. Now I'm suggesting that you take him to the firehouse right here, and go in there and tell him that he's out here overdosing. So it probably took them, all this probably happened in the course from the time I actually gave him the first dose till I watched them. I followed them back down the road. They went to the fire department, and I pulled back in the store, and I was just kind of looking over, and they left. So I'm hoping that he woke up. You know what I mean? I'm hoping he came out of it.
Yeah.
I can't see any other reason why they would go there and then leave. I mean, I just can't. If I had to do it differently, I would. The only thing I would do differently is I would still come here. I would still give them Narcan, but then I would have jumped in the car with them and forced them to go to the hospital with me. And he's probably out doing the same shit today, man. But like, there's certain things that people are unwilling to do because of the consequences. What happens if you get tied up in some kind of lawsuit? Like if that's what it costs to save dude's life, then fuck, it was worth it.
Yeah, I totally agree, man. And that's like, you have the opportunity. Someone said something like, you care about like a random junkie overdosing. Like, all human life is valuable, right? Like, I've shared my story that, I was a junkie, right? Like, you never know what someone will become later. And later I became a father. And so who knows? You could have had a huge impact on that individual's life. The problem is that when someone overdoses, what I've seen typically is when that individual falls out, everyone around that person is a panic. They do everything they can do. Like before the Narcan, naloxone days, they would, go crazy trying to save themselves so they don't go to jail, or so that person doesn't go to jail because they may make it through it, right, or whatever. And then they struggle to get them in a car, and then they take them to the emergency room, and then they, do the same shit that now we can do out in the street, but they bring them back with Narcan, hopefully, if they get them in time. And then when that person wakes up, they weren't there for that. Yeah, I mean, it's a terrible experience when they wake up. Right?
They're mad. They're fighting mad.
Yeah, they're dope sick right away. They're pissed off. And there's even been like, I don't know if you saw that shooting where the dude they administered Narcan and he woke up, and then after like 10 minutes they go to search him. He pulls out a little like Keltec P3AT or Ruger LCP, like a little 380, and starts shooting. Well, he missed the cops and he hit the fire department dude that saved his life.
No shit.
You know? Yeah, it's crazy. But the junkie, and I'm saying junkie, but the person struggling with substance abuse wasn't there for that, right? Like they weren't present for that peace, that panic, that fear, that wondering if they're going to live or die. They were out. They wake up. And you know what happened? All the opiates were just ripped off of their receptors in their brain, and they're going to go get high. And I see it almost, every single time.
Well, if you look at it today, if you look I mean, like, let's look at what really happened here, man. Let's still talk about some truth about the opiate crisis, right? So you have Purdue Pharma, right, that comes out with Oxycontin, floods the country with Oxycontins, man. I mean, like, people are getting out of emergency rooms and shit, going to the emergency room, like, oh, my neck hurts, and getting 40s. True story. I've seen that shit happen.
Yeah.
And then the government steps in. Okay, now let's just say all these people were abusing this drug and they were high, doing all this stupid shit. That's a them problem. But now you have people that need those drugs that can no longer get them because of government stepped in with regulation. At the same time,
all tamper proof.
Right, and at the same time, now heroin really come on the scene real hard. It was really on the scene before this, but people started noticing it, mid 2000, like 2005-ish, maybe a couple years before, plus minus. But magically, the same company that literally got the if you want to call it a crisis started, now has the cure. Suboxone or whatever. It's fucking. I'm sorry to be cussed, but it blows my mind that is, if we know that this company lied, and they did about Oxycontin. I remember watching a commercial about it in a doctor's office one time, and it was talking about how it was this new advanced painkiller that was non-addictive, just all kinds of crazy stuff. Yeah, and they literally got a whole generation of people, not obviously everybody, but hooked on opiates. And now you have, the heroin epidemic. So where does the heroin come from? How does it get into the country? Who's bringing it here? Who's allowing it to come here? Well, I would guess the same people that are funneling guns to Mexican drug cartels would be my guess. And they can stop it.
It happens to be right around a very interesting time where we had planes going to and from, Afghanistan and like that, just constantly, right? It's interesting. And that same company that started the epidemic of like Oxycontins and, then I think the reason they said that they weren't addictive is because of the time release. They're like, it just slowly emits like a little bit, right? I couldn't tell you how many time releases I've peeled off of OCs. Like,
back of your shirt's all yellow and shit.
Yeah.
Like, the inside bottoms of your shirt. That's how you could tell who did Oxycontins in the late 90s. You look at the bottom of their white t-shirt, see if you can see pink or yellow or green through it.
Pink, yellow, green. Yeah. But then they make them tamper proof, and all of a sudden we have, planes constantly going, back to and from, the Middle East. And obviously there's a lot to be said about like, why the GWAT guys were really over there and what they were really protecting and what they're really doing and all that. But, if I were to guess, because now the same company comes out with Suboxone and Subutex and Subzolve and like all these other like alternatives, maintenance drugs that also you become physically addicted to as well. And a lot of people will be on for the rest of their life. But,
some people look down on that, and I want to tell you how everybody should look at this. If anybody has somebody in their family or a friend or whatever that's on some kind of maintenance drug, here's how you need to look at that. Diabetics are on a maintenance drug. They're on insulin. And I know it's different in the sense that, your body's not doing it. You had the choice to take this drug, and now you're addicted. Guess what? You made the choice to with you're trying to better your life. If you had to take a drug every day to be normal, more power to it, man. I'm not going to knock them. There's a lot of people in the country that will. and that's part of the subjugating people, creating a sub society out of our society. And we do it in all kinds of different places. And in the end, it makes you less free. So if we can say that, this person is a bad person because they've changed their life and they're now on this maintenance drug, well, does that make you a bad person when you become older and you break your back or whatever, or you break a hip and now you have to be on a maintenance pain med? So does that make you a bad person or a criminal? You know what I mean? Like, it just, then people will always go back to, well, they made the choice. Well, again, people make bad choices. It's not about the bad choice. It's about learning from it and fixing the problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
But it goes even further. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, just to kind of tie everything up with a little bow, because of the way those events took place, I'm totally, like throwing a conspiracy theory out here, but I wouldn't be surprised if with that timeline of putting one of the most addictive drugs out available, where they were bonusing doctors tremendously to prescribe as much as they possibly could, the sales representatives were making $250,000, $500,000, like it was crazy. And then they come out with the solution, right? And they're getting paid off the solution. And then when all of these, drugs become tamper-proof, or when they disappear, all of a sudden heroin is just flooding our streets. I would not be surprised to learn that Big Pharma or Purdue or whomever had an investment of some sort in the poppy fields that were
right. Well, I mean, it goes further than that, though, because you have to start talking about when the planes slow down, what happens. So now we have fentanyl coming in through Mexico from China. Like, they know that shit happens, and they don't stop it. They don't stop it because it's part of, back to the 13th Amendment, the prison industrial complex. We got to keep those beds full in order to get this shit done. And it's all about money, man. It's all about funneling money, and you funnel it from one system to the next. Take the prison system. So here in Ohio, they have a thing called OPI, Ohio Prison Institutions. They make soap, sandals, shit like that for the prisons. Well, they don't make it for the prisons and give it to the prisons. It's a separate company that sells those products to the prison, right? So it's about transferring money around. I've told this story before. I got a buddy that's doing 7 years right now. He gets out in August. He wanted to take HVAC. HVAC's a 2-year class. Well, when he went in, they wouldn't let him take it. They said you have to wait to the last 2 years of your sentence in order to take this class. So he's like, all right, so because they want you to be fresh, allegedly. So they're getting millions of dollars from the federal government for these programs.
Yeah.
Well, they're now forcing these guys to go to the halfway house at their 6-month mark. So what does that mean? It means they don't get a certificate. So they get kicked out to the street out of prison after getting forced to go to a halfway house where they don't take the last 6 months of class. And now they're expected to go to school and finish these classes with $75 in their pocket and a set of gym. You know what I mean? Like, and it makes no sense. Then you give them every disadvantage in the world. Background checks. Like, where does background checks fit in with freedom? We had this conversation today in a live stream. If people are free, we have to assume that they're decent people until they prove otherwise. And somebody said, well, what about child molesters? Well, if somebody molested a child, they probably shouldn't be on the freaking street to begin with. Whatever judge didn't give them life is who you should have a problem with.
Yeah.
Right? But they do that shit because then it justifies the background checks, which does what? It makes it harder on the people coming out. And it's part of keeping that complex running, just like the military industrial complex. It's the same shit, man. It's all about funneling money. I mean, every war that we've had since 1812, the people that fund both sides of the war are the same people. It's about those people making that money. People are worried about what they see. They're worried about what the media tells them. What the 5 or 6 families that own all media in the country tell them to think. And then you have two teams. You got the CNN liberal team, you got the Fox Democrat team, and they're at each other's throat. When the truth is that one supports the other, and the other supports the government controlling us.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like it's completely a scam. Everything we know is a scam, and we've been lied to.
Yeah, it's true though, man. It's because then you look at the halfway houses that they put those guys in. They're like drug ridden.
Privately owned.
Yep, privately owned.
Privately owned. They pay some security dude $9 an hour, and then the guy in the halfway house says, "Hey, I'll give you $500 to bring in an ounce of weed." And I know that sounds like a lot of money, but when you could sell it in there for 1,500, diming it out or whatever it is that you do, then you give
Yeah.
him 500, you pay 100 for it, you just made $900. Like, you know what I mean? The
Yeah.
math's not there, and it's all about money. It's about funneling the money, shuffling the money in order to create the biggest numbers at the end of the day.
We actually brought a corrections officer on the show, and he had said that, I mean, there's a lot of corruption. I know it's different, right? The security for a halfway house versus like that, but it's all the same shit, right? It's, powerful people, people that are granted, certain responsibilities, uh, and they abuse it for money. And
Yep.
why are they doing it for money? Because we're trapped in this world of consumerism, and we need to continue the cycle. It's crazy.
Right. So the question that comes up with all these topics is, what's the answer? How do you fix it? I have two solutions, and if everybody did this, we can fix it. Number one, become completely self-sufficient. Grow your own food, your own water, your own security, all that. Rely on you. Make it to where you don't even have to go to Kroger's to buy nothing to eat.
Okay, hold on, guys. Did you hear that? This is literally what our channel has been about, becoming as completely self-sufficient as possible. So even if a conflict domestically does occur, you can get as far away from it as possible if you choose. But your own water, food, shelter, security. Boom. Sorry. Please continue.
No, you're good. Like right now, we've been working on our house. We're getting ready to sell it. We're literally going to buy a dolly and a fifth wheel, 31-foot fifth wheel, and with whatever cash we got left from selling the house, we're going to go buy some land somewhere. I know it sounds like a stupid ideal. What's the worst thing that can happen? We wind up living in a fifth wheel. You know what I mean? Like right now,
excellent idea.
Right, but I mean, some people think it's a bad idea, but we live in Southwest Ohio. We live north of Cincinnati, just north of Cincinnati. We live inside the 275 loop. It's just not for us, man. Like, I want to be left alone, but more importantly, I want you to be left alone. And that's what people don't understand. It's not necessarily about me. I'm 40 years old. My life's over. It's about my kids. It's about you. It's about my wife. What do I have to do to ensure their freedom? Well, when it comes to personal responsibility, we have to do that. We have to, be able to produce our own food, security, housing, and water, medical treatment. But they're not going to leave us alone, because you still have things like property taxes. So where does property taxes come from? If you look back through history, look at England, just as an example, before the revolution, you had to pay the king a tax to use his land. If you add in the fact of what happened in the Act of 1871 with the corporation called the United States of America, that is in Scotland, which is under the crown, we're literally paying the king. We're still under the crown today, man, and people don't want to recognize that because of the lies that we've been told. Well, who's told us the lies? Well, if you look back in history again, at one time the schools were community based. So, people on my street would get together, and some woman would decide to teach our kids what they needed to know to get them through life. Government took that over because government does everything right. And what's the first thing that they've taken out? The Constitution. Why? Because the Constitution's our restriction on them. If we don't know our own restrictions on them, there's no way to enforce those restrictions, which means they can do anything. It all becomes Constitution.
Dude, the other guy, Light, that's on the show, his son is 15, and he came home from high school with they were studying the Constitution at school. He came home with a copy of the Bill of Rights that was literally edited, like it was like the Cliff Notes version of the Bill of Rights. That's what they're teaching these kids.
Doesn't surprise me at all. I'm surprised we've been teaching them that, man. Well, it's just part of the illusion. We've been sold the illusion of freedom. Like I tell people, like I said to you earlier, is being free to do as you're told freedom?
Yeah.
I mean, is it? No, it's slavery is what it is.
Yeah.
So what is freedom? Well, freedom is the ability for me to take whatever liberty I choose as long as I'm not violating your rights. Right?
Yeah.
People just don't understand that. They don't understand what freedom is, and they don't see that the wedge that's been driven in between us, not only us as society, but our communities. You know, when I grew up, I knew my neighbors for 5 miles around, knew their names, knew their families, ate dinner with them. I
Yeah.
couldn't tell you, you know, I just happen to know two of my neighbors here after, you know, this house being here for 8 years.
Yeah.
They've driven that wedge, you know, and they've done it through, I'll tell you what they've done it through is this thing I got in my hand and what you're looking at, right?
Yeah.
Technology. Saying it's the devil. I don't
Yeah.
literally mean that like it's literally the devil, but it's not good for us. We get, you know, and they do shit. And if you go back, there's a video out where the original co-founder, I think it was the original co-founder of Facebook, might have been like a CEO or something, where he talks about they intentionally get you addicted to this shit.
Yeah.
That like button's a dopamine hit. It's like taking a hit of crack or something.
Yeah.
And people get addicted to that shit. Now you got people on Facebook, like, you know, I don't get on Facebook. Occasionally I do for like Marketplace. And when I do, my thread will come up. And it's like I never left. Even if I'm gone for a year, they're still arguing about, you know, some Democrat and some Republican somewhere. And the
Yeah.
truth is, they're on the same team. You know, government is one animal. It's not multiple teams fighting for you. It's one animal. And it's all about power, corruption, money, and greed.
You know,
And
they don't understand the whole country, the world really,
yeah,
has been bifurcated by this, you know, illusion that there's two sides and one side is better. And you know, even me, like, you know, I voted for Obama in his first term, and then I voted for Trump in his first term, and it's like yeah, I've taken a completely different path and journey to understand, like, you know, what life is truly about. And I don't even want to fucking be here. I'm going through my journey to, you know, get land and be 100% self-sufficient. I'm not there right now, so all I can do is work towards it and show other people. And if I can post a video, even though I'm using this fucking devilish bullshit, you know, to get it out as a medium, if I can encourage others, and I have, like, luckily I've gotten emails of people saying, like, I went out, I bought land, I'm planting trees, I'm, you know, like that makes me feel good.
right. And it's a good thing. It could, you know, technology can be used for good things. It can also be used for really bad things. The thing is, like, you got to find that line. You know, you got to find that line everywhere. But the second thing we need to do, in my mind, is abolish the police forces, man. And I know, like, to that, some people that just sounds crazy, but like, you have to look at the facts. You know, are you responsible for your own safety? Okay, yes. If murder wasn't illegal, would you be murdering people? Would you be raping people if rape wasn't illegal? No, you wouldn't. You're either immoral or you're moral. But here's what's actually happened in this country. I drew it on my wall somewhere. I think over there. So we allowed everybody to vote. So voting is not a right. They've convinced you it's a right, but it's not a right. In the sense, so if you become a man and you're a worthless man who relies on everybody around you to feed you, house you, whatever, why should you have a vote? So we've given people votes that are, you know, we have 4 generations of families now on welfare, but they have a vote. If you're productive, you get up, you go to work, you own your own business, whatever. This person who does nothing, who's taking your money, has the same vote as you do. So what are they going to vote for every time? More of your money. Right,
Yeah.
more of your money.
Or
So
at
we've
least
allowed
the same amount of your money.
right. Well, we've allowed this to go on for so long. The unproductive now outnumber the productive.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's why you see the major swing in this country from, you know, the past decade, especially from, you know, people that are lightweight, you know, but I would say they might have a possible ideal of freedom, what it is till now. They just want what they want your money. They think government just has a vault full of gold somewhere, and like government agencies are out there mining gold to produce this wealth. And in the end, like you said, you know, it's not just happening here; it's happening across the whole world. There's, I never recognized it until recently, maybe the last, I don't know, 6 months or a year. There's a handful of families in the world that have their fingers in everything going on in every country. So, you know, some people say it's 5, some people say it's 9. It doesn't matter. How do we stop that from happening? How do we become completely free? We have to get away from the system, but they're never going to leave you alone. Go buy your land. Grow all your own food. Be responsible for your security. And guess what? You're still going to be paying a tax on that land that you own. You're still going to be paying the king to lease his land.
Yeah.
And who's going to come enforce that? Somebody with a
Somebody's-
badge on.
Yeah.
Right.
And
And I
even
know-
if you go and build a structure on that land
Yeah.
that is legally yours, guess what? You gotta go through. You gotta get permits. You gotta get the
Yep.
soil test. Even after you've built a structure to live in, you have to get an additional permit to reside within that structure. It's crazy.
And who comes and takes you out of there if they decide that you didn't do it correctly or whatever?
Yeah.
Somebody with a badge. So I never gave government any kind of authority over me. Like, government has a job. They have 18 specific powers that we gave them. Now they're operating way outside of their boundary. If you read the Declaration of Independence, the preamble to the Constitution, it talks about consent. You know, the people they're only governed by consent, meaning that we don't have to consent to what we don't agree with. And I don't agree with anything that's going on right now. I withdraw my consent. They can all kiss my ass. You know, for now, I play their game because of where I'm at. But once we leave here, there's no more playing the game. You know, all bets are off, them bastards. And I just want to be left alone, but they're never going to leave me alone for the same reason they're going to never leave you alone.
Yeah.
Because if they leave me alone, then you're going to want to be left alone. And then if we're left alone, the next guy's going to want to be left alone. And then everybody's going to be left alone. And then who's going to pay the tab?
Yeah. Our next generation.
Right. Well, no, well, I mean, if that was the case and they left us all alone, there would be nobody to pay the tab. That's the point. That's why they're never going to leave us alone. You know, there's a guy, you know, you see, it's just, there's so much shit, man. It's so far gone now that we could spend days talking about this shit and the problems. But, you know, you see like what do they try to create all these gun control laws? You know, they'll come out with 15 of the bastards at the same time all across the country. And it's not about having all the spaghetti stick to the wall. It's not about having the whole bowl of spaghetti stick to the wall. They just need one piece of spaghetti to stick to the wall this time. And then next time they'll come out with 15 more, and you'll feel like you won because you beat 14 of them, but you still had another, you know, piece of spaghetti stick to the wall. Yeah. And before you know it, over a period of time, the wall's freaking covered with spaghetti, stuck one piece at a time.
Yeah.
You know, like it just
death by 1,000 cuts.
Right. Yeah, it's death by 1,000 cuts, you know, and people look at things like constitutional carry. People think constitutional carry is a great thing. They're like, yay, we got constitutional carry in Texas or Tennessee or whatever. I'm like, dude, you're an idiot. Constitutional carry is government taking more power from the people, further making your right a privilege. Well, how is that? I can open carry now. Well, go read it. It says anybody that, you know, lawfully has a firearm or that's a law-abiding citizen, you know, if the founders were law-abiding citizens, there'd be a damn British flag in your front yard right now.
Yeah,
like, that's not what this country's about, man. We're not about bending over to government and taking it for whatever they say. You know, we're born free. We should be able to live our lives, do whatever we want, as long as I'm not violating your personal life or your physical personal being, your property, or stealing from you. I should be able to do anything I want. Why can't I? Well, government. Somebody with a badge on is going to come stop me. You know, if my grass gets higher than 7 inches where I live at, I can get a ticket for it. I can get fined for that shit. Some asshole with a badge is going to come find me.
Yeah.
You know, like the dude overdosed and call the paramedics, the cops show up. Now they're harassing mom and dad probably, wanting to know where the dope's at or where he got it or where they picked him up from and all that shit. Instead of focusing on the problem, which is the kids right here are dying, man. Let's deal with this.
His life. Yeah. Instead of focusing on saving his life, they're searching his pockets.
Right. And then they want to hold these cops up as heroes. So somebody said the other day about a cop running into a building and saving the child for this burning building. I said, well, that had shit to do with him being a cop. He did it because he was a man. That's what any man should do. Like, show me one thing a cop has done that is good because he's a cop. Does that make sense? What I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So not like the guy ran into the building to save the kid. He did that because he was a man. It had nothing to do with the uniform. That can be proven, like with a Parkland shooting, where the guy with the uniform on ran and hit.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, I would say the majority of people in this chat would run into building or take out that dude that was shooting like that. And of course, no one's talking about that shit, right?
Right. Yeah. So, I mean, do we need to support the police? So every infringement committed by government in this country since the founding of this country has happened at the hands of who? Law enforcement, right?
Yeah.
So if law enforcement is the one that's really violating your rights, and people can say, well, it's the law. Well, guess what? They have what's called free will. There's no amount of money you could pay me to violate your rights. So we have a group of immoral men willing to commit immoral actions against immoral people in exchange for payment. Like
Yeah.
it's a complete scam, man. We've
That
been
sounds
scammed.
like tyranny to me.
Right, and it is tyranny. I mean, it is. Like I said, there's nowhere in the Constitution did we allow for policing forces. Nowhere. We're supposed to police ourselves as a community. Sheriffs in each, they're actually supposed to be appointed, not elected. The sheriffs were allowed in each parish or community a sheriff, and his only job was to be a mediator between the police, between the people and the common law court. And what I mean by that is, say that Joe across the street broke into my house. It would be on me to collect that evidence, take that evidence to the sheriff, and the sheriff decide whether or not if there was enough evidence to to say that a crime had been committed. If so, he would, fill out an affidavit for a warrant at the court and get that warrant. And then he would deputize members of the militia to go arrest, Joe Bob across the street or whatever. The sheriff couldn't just go arrest Joe Bob on his own. It took the community to do it. So the community, who's now deputized, goes and arrests Jim Bob or whatever his name is, and now he's in custody of the sheriff. But once all that happens, that deputization is negated. That way we're all equal all the time. Nobody has authority over anyone, because if somebody has authority over you, by definition, you're not free.
Yeah. You're a subject.
Right. And if you go back and look at the 14th Amendment and you look at the definition of citizen, what does it mean? It is a subject that has allegiance to a government.
I mean, definitely given a fresh perspective, because personally, I would have said that I'm pro police, but I think that goes back to the same thing of, mercy for others. They can't protect themselves. And it's only based on our society and the way it is now,
right,
which has only occurred through our programming and all pure fuckery.
And policing forces.
Yeah.
The old lady wouldn't get robbed if the robber knew that everybody on the street was going to put a hole in his ass for doing it. but it don't happen no more, man. Like, it just, like I see it. I understand what you're saying about the old lady, but you have to look at it. You can't look at it in today's perspectives. Okay, so to fix a problem, the problem is going to be fixed, but you're going to be dealing with problems until it's completely fixed. And we have a long road ahead of us. It's going to be a rough road, no matter how it goes. I mean, you have two options. We stay on the road that we're on, and we know what's going to happen. Everybody knows what's going to happen. We all see it coming. We feel it coming. We know it's coming.
Yeah.
If you want to go arrest whoever's writing the rules, let's do it. Let's get together right now. We can meet right now. I'll jump in my car and I'll meet you somewhere, and we'll go arrest who is ever responsible for what's happened. Wait, we can't do that. Why? Why can't we do it?
It's the badge in between.
Because we're going to be stopped. Who are you going to be stopped by? The dude with the badge on. Why? Because he's executing the law. So, like I started to say earlier, when this whole experiment started, politicians wasn't a career path. You had to be, it was a voluntary position. Any position was voluntary with the exception of the president. And so it's supposed to be a burden, but it's turned into a career because we let it get out of control. So they create the policing forces. They then create the laws that keep them from having to face repercussions for their actions. So when it began, they would come home to the community, and if they'd be like, what'd you do, Legislator Joe? And he'd be like, oh, I infringed on your rights this week. And they'd burn his house to the ground. Okay, you want to do that? Well, we're going to do something to you. Well, they put a stop to that. They made all that shit illegal. And now their security forces, the police, protect them from ever facing those repercussions. Now the repercussion is, well, vote them out. They don't give a shit if you vote them out. They're multimillionaires. Why do they care? Yeah. Sure, they want to make more money, but it ain't going to bother them a bit. And they don't get voted out no more. That's why you have people like Joe Biden, who's been in freaking office for 50 years. 50 years in government.
It's crazy.
what's supposed to be a burden is what's the most craziest part about it. The only payment they were supposed to get is to be reimbursed for their travel expenses. That's it. And now you have them, and they give themselves their own raises. They got paid all through COVID. They got paid. It's just, it's ridiculous. And people keep buying into it, and buying into it's the problem, It doesn't matter if it's Trump or Biden. That shit don't matter. They're on the same team. They stand out on the stage and look at Kamala Harris and the shit that crazy bitch said about Joe Biden during the damn
oh my
debate.
God. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And now they're best friends.
Yeah.
Shit, they're co-workers now, kicking it. He picked her after all the crazy shit that bitch said about him. He still picked her. That's his running mate. Why?
You know what? Because if I were to guess, I would say it wasn't him that picked her.
Oh,
right?
Oh yeah, no, it wasn't, man. Like it was their handlers who handled
Yeah. Probably the same person and or people that took that patent out on that COVID-19 testing in 2015.
Right. And look at that, man. Like when all that shit first happened, I was in on it too. Like I was scared. I was scared for my family. I was scared for me. We kind of dipped out for a second. But after about a week, I was like, wait a minute, something's not right here. Like, the pandemic in 1918, the Spanish flu pandemic, people were literally burying people, every other week. You know what I mean? How many people do you know that's died from this thing? You gotta watch what we say because they'll give you a strike.
Yeah,
I would venture to say you don't know anybody that's died from it.
Not personally that's died.
Right.
No.
But you're in wherever you're at. I'm in Ohio and I don't know anybody. And I know people in Tennessee and I know people in Texas. I know people in Arizona, California, and all these places. And nobody knows anybody that's died from this pandemic. And if you look at the flu diagnoses from last year from the CDC, they miraculously dropped 98%. Now, I can't say why they dropped because you'll get a strike for it. But it would appear that the cure of one disease is the other disease appearing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's there's a lot behind that wall.
Right. So what realistically happened? What realistically happened was nothing. Scare tactics through the media to then induce control of people. And then you start asking about the cure for this thing. They're putting people in lotteries for this, giving people free lap dances if you got a jab, and all this crazy shit.
Dude, it's nuts. Uber, I just put out a video the other day. Uber is literally putting millions and millions of dollars into giving people free rides to get the jab to and from.
Right. So why?
Why would a company, a for-profit company, be willing to, be at a net negative of, literal millions of dollars, unless they're the one being compensated for it in some other way or forced to do it or, something. There's something else.
Right. Well, I have a cousin that works at a place right here in Ohio. I can't remember the name of it. AstraZeneca is where he works at. And they make a version of the jab. But it's not approved. It's not approved here. It's only approved in Europe, so they can't. But they're doing it. It's not for profit. They're doing it at a cost, right? So I have some videos with him talking on my channel. But being somebody that makes it, he won't take it. Like, what does that say?
Yeah.
And now you have all these problems. People having blood clots, and my wife's twin sister was pregnant and got it 4 days later, miscarried.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So what's the end game? Well, we don't know. I can tell you this though. It's about control. It's never about today. It's about the next thing. It wasn't about the mask. It was about the jab. You know what I mean? And you see how people react to it. You have all these people. I was in the post office the other day and the lady told me she couldn't serve me because I didn't have a mask on. Now, I legitimately, when all this shit first happened, because I'm just a dickhead like this, I legitimately went to my family doctor and I said, I need to be exempt of wearing a face covering. He said, why? And I literally looked at him and said, because I'm allergic to bullshit. And he giggled about it and he wrote it an exemption. Like it says, Freedom Inc. is exempt from having to wear any kind of face covering because of current medical conditions. So when I go into places like that, like the post office the other day, they want to see proof. Show me your papers.
Yeah.
You're medically exempt. I'm like, what, you going to ask for somebody in a wheelchair to show you the papers that they can be in a wheelchair? Because there's no difference in it. But
Yeah.
this thing trumps everything. It trumps law. It trumps natural rights. It trumps everything, even HIPAA.
Oh my God. Yeah. Don't get me started on that, because like,
Dude,
when else have people openly talked about their medical histories so much? Like,
right.
literally, like people wearing T-shirts of, which jab they got, and
Right.
it's nuts.
Well, I mean, look at people like me. Like, whether it's bullshit or not, I'm medically exempt. I have a legal from a doctor a note saying I do not have to wear any kind of face covering, and we had it worded very specific because I didn't want them to say, "Well, here's a shield for you." No, we're not doing none of that shit.
Yeah.
But my doctor, why did he write it? When I told him I was allergic to bullshit, I don't know, because he probably knew that if he didn't write it, he would probably feel like something that was going to happen would be on his hands. I don't know why, to be honest with you, but he wrote it nonetheless. But the post office is asking for your medical paperwork. You know what I mean? I told you I'm in the business. That should be enough. But no, they literally, and it's not just the post office. I've been told to show my paperwork. Walmart, Myers, where else, Chris? I've been told to show my paperwork. Doctor's visits, dentist.
Speedway.
Yeah, but like some places I get it. Some places I have no problems with. If you don't want people in here wearing a mask, more power to you. If you're a private business, you own your little hardware store. You built the hardware store. It's all your money, more power to you. But you take companies like Walmart as an example, who is taking public funds. Kiss my ass.
Yeah. Here's the interesting thing, though. I've always been of the belief that, like, if the government cannot legislate what they want to occur, what they do is they achieve what they want through the programming of society, right?
100%.
So society says, that's bad, right? So now what they're doing is they're saying, oh, if you've gotten the jab, then you don't need to wear a mask, right? So now when people see other people wearing masks, they say, oop, it's an anti-vaxxer. It's an anti-vaxxer, right? Or, I can like literally just see it now where, when people get the vax, they get given a card. The card has a number on it. And the only reason I know that is because, people were posting their little cards on like Facebook and like, whatever Twitter shit, whatever people are doing nowadays. And they said, hey guys, don't post those pictures because those numbers are like tied to you personally. So there's got to be, there's got to be something in the future.
Right. Well, they're actually not. See, so the government's not very bright. We all know this. They're bright enough to control people over a period of time because they obviously control us, but they're not bright enough in the sense that, so when they open up all these jab places everywhere, like out in parking lots, CVS, Kroger's, all these places, they would do it by lot numbers. So when you get a jab, it'll have your name on it, the date of the jabs, the lot numbers of the jab. Okay. It doesn't have a number tied directly to you.
Okay.
So the ideal was, though, is that those places that gave those jabs was going to give that information over to whoever to be put in a database, so they would know that you got it. We have to assume, because of everywhere these places popped up, thousands of people going through Kroger's as an example every day to get these things.
Yeah.
Somewhere along the line, the people fell through the cracks, which comes into what? The fake cards people were making. Did you see where the people were getting arrested for making the fake cards?
Yeah, I didn't actually see it, but we've been talking about it for months.
Yeah, right. Well, I do figured out the same thing. Like you said, people were posting on Facebook and all this shit. All that's the information that you would need in order to make a fake card.
Yeah.
So, and then like I said, they know that there's been people fall through the cracks by the hundreds and thousands. So who's to say you wasn't one of those people? Well, they don't know. All they know is you have this card now. Like, the government's not the brightest.
Mm-hmm.
But it's never about today, man. It's about what's going to happen tomorrow. Like I said, it wasn't about the mask. It was about the jab. And you're going to see that they're going to make it to where, just like vaccinations for school, your kids have to be vaccinated in certain areas to go to school. There's ways around it. It's a pain in the ass. You have to fight and argue and bitch. You have to go against the grain, but you can get your kid in school without taking a vaccination. But when they make it where you have to buy food or to exchange money, your digital currency that they control.
Yeah.
then the problem comes. The problem shows its face. But we can't let it get to that. So you have today like BLM burning shit to the ground all the way across the country. Everybody knows it, right? And then everybody's sitting back watching the cops making excuses for them because they're doing nothing. Or they were told to stand down. Like, what are these dudes robots? They don't have free will. And it blows my mind. The other day, a guy told me that Security I-42. I said something about, there's a good cop. He said, well, all the good cops quit 2 years ago. Then why are you still supporting them, asshole? You know what I mean? If they'll stand back and watch BLM burn shit to the ground, then arrest people for trying to save their own property or protect their own lives. Where are we at in this country, man? We're being controlled because we've been convinced to support the very ones who oppress us, the police. Joe Biden's not going to get all kitted out with Kamala and go kicking in doors tonight. It's going to be some asshole with a badge on, probably kicking in the door, somebody that, doesn't need their door kicked in. And everybody's cool with them. Everybody's cool with, I talked about this earlier, the Air Force guy in San Diego that had his door kicked in and was killed by the police. And oops, it was the wrong house. The drug dealer lived next door. Well, nobody cares until it's them dying on the floor that was shot by the police. That's when they care. But people don't care until it touches them. And anybody that supports the police in any way, just been lucky enough that they haven't been touched yet. But when they get touched, they'll be the ones screaming, "Where's everybody at?" Yeah. This tyranny here. The anti-federalists are responsible for the Bill of Rights coming into existence. Read the Bill of Rights, man. Everything in it is something that the redcoats were enforcing, that were violating the people's rights. The redcoats were arresting people for news articles against the king, for speaking out against the king, for practice of their religion, for assembling. They were arresting people that were in the press. Then you move on to the Second Amendment. The king was dictating what people could and couldn't own. I mean, the British redcoats came to confiscate firearms in Lexington and Concord, so it led to the shot heard around the world. The Third Amendment, they were just kicking somebody's door to their house, just walk in and lay down like they owned the place and stay the night. The Fourth Amendment, you know what I mean? On and on and on. The police forces is what led to that. We don't need police. What we need is a society of moral men and women who are responsible for their own lives and property, to just live and be free, and government to do the very few duties that we gave it. But unless we keep it in check, it becomes tyrannical. The men who created it told us it would, and it has.
Yeah. Damn. Well,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say that's an interesting perspective, man. I appreciate you coming on and sharing all that. That's definitely giving me a different perspective of how I look at police, man. I mean, all the shootings, right? Sorry, just real quick. Even all the shootings, like you mentioned something like there's a point in which when somebody does something, like a lethal response is necessary. Like, let's say in the community, person to person, right? Threat of violence, like not like a bullshit fist fight, right? Where people say, "Oh, I just shoot them just because they're, soft-ass pussies." Like real threat of loss of life or, extreme like violence and whatever. Thinking of like me looking at all these, the 13 minorities that were shot and killed that started the riots that killed 34 minorities. If with your logic, with your perspective, those shootings that prior to this I said were all clean shootings, technically started with infringements. Every single situation was started with an infringement.
What'd you say? I'm sorry.
So I said, with your like perspective, every single one of those shoots that I said were clean started with infringements.
I don't know exactly what shootings you're talking about, but let me give you an example. So right after the Parkland shooting, there was not the Parkland shooting, I'm sorry, the Texas shooting at the Walmart. There was a shooting here in Ohio and Dayton. I think there was 26 people shot or something. They were at a bar, man. So in Ohio, you can't take a firearm to a bar. How many of those people would have had a firearm on them that died if there wasn't a law saying they couldn't have a firearm on them? So, and I'll get to how I came to this logic too here in a second with my son. How many of those people would have been the first person that would have been able to take the shooter out, that had evil will in his heart? Would have been the second person? Would have been the 25th person? Regardless, those people should have had the opportunity to save their lives to this person. But what we do is we create laws keeping people from protecting themselves. Somebody with evil intentions who gives no shits about the law at all. You know, they're not like, oh, murder is illegal, so I'm not going to do it. They kill people. They're evil. So nothing restrains them. So these people die. This guy kills them. Then the cops show up and kill that guy. And these cops are labeled heroes when really they're the villain. Because those people who didn't carry a firearm were worried about those same cops arresting them and taking them to jail for being able to protect their own lives.
Yeah.
My son died 12 days before his 21st birthday, or he could have legally carried a firearm when he was 21. He was shot and killed. We still don't know all the details. We know what we've been told. The truth is, my son carried illegally all the time. My son was fast with a gun. He was really fast with his carry pistol. No matter what happened that day, if my son would have had his firearm on him, I would bet my life right now that he'd still be alive. And I would damn near bet my life he would have saved the other guy that was killed too. It was a double homicide. My son and his friend was also murdered. Mm-hmm. The guy who killed him didn't give a shit. He didn't care about the law. But my son feared being arrested and going to jail and then, you know, quote unquote, losing his rights. That's why he didn't have a firearm on him. He didn't have no ill will toward anybody. He didn't have evil in his heart. He didn't want to kill nobody. Laws, you know, good men don't need laws. Bad men don't follow laws. So what are laws really for? Control. That's what they're for. They're for control. And when we allow our government to violate the rights of one individual, we allow our government to violate the rights of all individuals, even our own, you know. And it all started, I bring up the felon all the time. People associate this with, you know, well, all kinds of crazy shit, but it doesn't matter. The truth is that if we allow government to violate the felon's rights, what happens over time is that they find a reason to violate ours. So we point at that scary felon and say, oh, he committed this bad crime, so he shouldn't have the right to keep bear arms no more. Well, the fact is he never loses his rights, but they make it so he can't buy a gun legally, right? He gets consequences, he goes back to jail. What we should be focusing on is that there's evil people in the world. We don't get to choose when those evil people act out. We need to protect ourselves. And we don't know what this guy's going to do in the future. If he's so bad that he shouldn't be in society, if he can't have a firearm, he's too damn dangerous to be behind the wheel of a car. He's too dangerous to be in society. So why'd you let him out? So these people really have problems with sentencing. That's what they had. You know, if a guy whacked 10 people and did 20 years and they let him out, that's a sentencing issue. But he still has the right to protect himself as he's in society because there's nobody there to protect him.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So who enforces that shit? Cops do. Like I have no use for the police at all. Zero. I have no empathy for those bastards. I mean, they are executors of the Crown's rule and revenue enhancement. That's it. That's all they do. The road pirates and enforcers. And we're not, you know, there's nowhere. I challenge anybody. And like I said, somebody's going to bring up Article 2, Section 3, which is not what it says whatsoever, to tell me where we gave government authority over the people.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But we've been led to believe over time that these people are not only normal, they are here for our best interest. They protect us. They're constitutional. And it's a total scam. Because in the end, you know, like I said, every atrocity, and you can look and verify this yourself, throughout the history of all governments, every atrocity that's happened because of that government has happened at the hands of that government's law enforcement.
Yeah.
It's always been law enforcement.
Yeah. Well, first off, dude, I'm terribly sorry for your loss. That's, as a parent, like I couldn't imagine. And that's
Dude, like honestly, man, I'm more mad at the state than I am. The kid killed my son as a 25-year-old dude. When it started, like I told you, I talked to the prosecutor and I told him what I knew they were going to do, and I made a video about it, man. Like, this county is crooked as shit. They're going to offer him a plea deal, and here's the plea deal that they're going to offer him, and and this was right when it first happened, and I was assured that wouldn't happen because I knew if it didn't go to trial, I wouldn't know exactly what happened. If it's a trial, I can sit there, I can see the evidence for myself, I can come to my conclusion about what really happened that day. And it isn't important. It is important, but it's not important for my son. It's important for the guy that's there on trial. And I know that sounds crazy that I'm standing up for the guy that's on trial that killed my son, right? But we don't know what my son did. Did my son really go there with the intent to rob him? I don't know. Why don't I know? Because they didn't go to trial. It's hidden. It's hidden. I don't have the right to see that paperwork or to see that evidence now. Did my son just happen to be at the wrong place at the wrong time? I don't know. But yeah, he actually did. His car broke down. The guy picked him up, and two guys picked him up on the way. That's where they were headed to. Was where they were murdered at. But we don't know. Well, this guy, the kid, a 25-year-old kid that killed my son and my son's friend, signed a deal that was 23 to life, and the courts did it behind my back. They didn't let me know what was happening because it was supposed to go to trial. They promised me that they were making him go to trial. So I stood up at his sentencing, and I just flat out told the court, we had to default to freedom, man. And sometimes that doesn't always work in your best interest. So if we have to believe that everybody's innocent until proven guilty, I don't believe that somebody that signs a plea bargain, especially a 25-year-old kid who probably doesn't understand the difference between killing and murdering. He knew he pulled the trigger and he knew he killed somebody, but did he murder my son is the question. But he signed a plea bargain for 23 to life, and I stood up in front of the court and told him it was too much time. The court didn't, convict him beyond a reasonable doubt by a jury of his peers. It's complete bullshit, and it was fucking way too much time. I had to assume that he defended his own life, and in that case, he shouldn't get any time. But if he did, then I still, depending on what happened, which we don't know. Did he just cold blood kill my son? Yeah, give him 23 to life. Probably doesn't ever need to come out again if it was complete cold blood. Well, we just don't know. Freedom's dangerous for dude. You know what I mean? It's a dangerous game, but you always have to default to it, because if you don't default to it, then you buy into the control mechanism of it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't always work in your favor. Like it just does, just like in that. I thought about that for days what I was going to say, actually longer than that, probably months before I actually got to say it. And by chance, he was supposed to go on trial. I think it was the 12th of February. And like on the 8th or 9th or something, I called somewhere for some reason, just randomly. They're like, "Oh, he's getting sentenced today." I'm like, "What are you talking about? He's getting sentenced today. His trial ain't until like next week." They're like, "Oh, they gave him a plea bargain." I'm like, those bitches. And that goes back to, it's not about the truth anymore, man. It's not about, you're here now, pay your debt to society. Why does he owe society? He don't owe society a debt. He owes us a debt. He owes the family a debt. He owes my son a debt.
Yeah.
But that's part of that control thing. He owes society. He owes it. If it would be how it's supposed to be, he'd be tried in a common law court in the community, and the family of the victim, if the victim was no longer alive, would have influence on what happened to him. So somebody steals your car and they wreck it. Well, they need to go do whatever, and then they owe me a car, plus a car. You know what I mean? Like, they owe a debt to the family. It's the same. I know that a car, my son's way different. Right. So who gains from him going to prison for 23 years? It's not society.
Yeah.
It's government.
Same people.
Right. It's government, because they legalized slavery for committing a crime, but they've legalized it. So now he's going to go to one of these level 3 prisons and make road signs and shit, so they don't have to buy them from the private sector, which does what? Makes them money. And that's all it's about, man. It's about filling beds of money. It's the same reason they don't get rid of the heroin, the fentanyl problem, because it fills beds. Those people go through the damn court system like it's a revolving door.
Yeah. Well, I got to say, that's a true commitment to your belief in freedom and liberty for you to hold that standard for the guy that, murdered your son. That's crazy.
Well, like I said, man, you always have to default to freedom. As long as you do that, then we can be free. But when we start, putting restrictions on it and regulations and laws and all this other bullshit, it totally takes away from the whole intent. If the whole intent was for me to be able to be born, my mama to raise me to become a man, me to live my life. As long as I didn't inject myself in anybody else's life by violating, their life or property, I can just live my life free. You can't even do that today.
Yeah.
It's like I said, it's a long conversation, man. There's a lot of shit to talk about, but the two things that need to happen in order to fix this country: number one, become completely self-sufficient; number two, abolish the police forces. Like I said, I'm willing to admit, me and my family probably wouldn't make it through that. We probably wouldn't come out on the other side as the free people, but those that would be able to be free. And then hopefully they could keep the government in check after that. I'm not for abolishing government, but I'm for getting rid of the police. That way those in government have to face repercussions for their actions. Remove all policing forces today, would the government be doing the shit that it does? Hell no.
No, there's no way.
No.
They couldn't get away with it. It's too much accountability.
Right. They couldn't get away with it. They would have to answer directly to the people how they're supposed to.
Yeah.
Like I said, man, it's been a long, drawn-out scam. We've all been scammed out of our lives. Our freedom has been stolen. Our lives, and realistically, our lives have been stolen. We're all in prison. You look outside and you don't see chain link fence, but guess what? You're in prison. Go try to leave the country without applying for a passport first. Asking that government if you can leave. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That cost you money. I mean, we've been scammed into, and it all funnels back into this handful of families in the world who have all this control. But you can't just go after that. You have to go through the barriers before that. So we have the police, the state police, the National Guard, the federal agencies, the military. That's all the barriers they have put between them and us, all of which are either unconstitutional or acting in an unconstitutional manner. Our military ain't supposed to be big brother to the world, man. We're supposed to have enough military to protect our forts, bases, magazines, and needful buildings here in the country.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's all something it's not supposed to be. And in the end, I just want to be left alone. That's it. I just want you to be free.
I want to be left alone too.
Right. But you can't. You'll never be able to be left alone. And the person that's going to bother you is going to have a badge on. In the end.
Damn. Well, dude, we're at the 2-hour mark now, man. But I appreciate you coming on, man.
Hey, thanks for inviting me, man. I appreciate you having me on.
Hell yeah, man. So where can everyone find you?
Oh, Freedom Inc. Freedom Space Inc. on YouTube. If you don't mind, you can leave a link in your description.
Hell yeah. I'll pull it up and I'll post it here real quick. Let me see. 1 second. Here y'all go.
Yeah, thanks, man.
You guys go over and sub, man. He's right in alignment with a lot of the shit that we talk about, and obviously talking about self-sufficiency, and it's perfect. I would love to come on your show one day. I know I can teach you how to use StreamYard for free. So
all right, cool. Yeah, I do split live streams sometimes. I usually use Zoom or something just because it was the easiest for me to use. But yeah, we can do it. We can do it whenever you want, bud. So let me know when you got time. We'll do it.
Nice, man. Cool. And for anyone that's still in here from Freedom Inc.'s viewership, you check us out. It's Dark Light Dugan. We essentially are focusing on self-sufficiency. How to become as self-sufficient as possible with water, food, shelter, security. And occasionally we talk, crazy conspiracy theories and all that as well. Mostly just facts and truth, but what people call conspiracy theories. So awesome, man. Thank you again. Thank you, Chad. And most importantly, I'm sorry, we give every guest the honor of naming the stream. So you get to name the stream, whatever you want.
Oh shit, I don't know. I don't try to name the stream. I can't think like that. I can't do it on the fly.
I could name it shit. I don't know.
Yeah, there you go. Shit, I don't shit. None of us know. Well, I'll say, hell, I don't know.
Dude, that's perfect.
What does it take to be free? I mean, I don't know, man. I don't know.
What does it take to be free? Shit, I don't know.
I'll
I'll freak something like that in there.
You name whatever you want, but I appreciate you.
Hell yeah, man. I appreciate you coming on, dude. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, man.
Good night, boys. Y'all stay safe.
Hell yeah. Later. Damn. That was cool. Dude, I appreciate all y'all coming on, man. That was some deep shit, and it's a cool ass dude. So, obviously, man, love all y'all. If you guys that are here from Freedom Inc.'s stream, we would love your viewership as well. So check us out. Darklight Dugan, you know, I know I just explained it, but you would be very comfortable here. All right, y'all. To all my DLDers, to all my blue glowies, I love y'all. Be safe. Be dangerous. He's a fella. I don't give a fuck. Yeah, I'll do a quick after party on Discord for like a half an hour. Although each night I say I'll do it for half an hour, and then, you know, I'm on there for 2.5 hours. So check us out, subscribe, you know, like, dislike, I don't give a fuck. Just engage to some degree. And I think we may be having a very interesting giveaway for our next month. So I love y'all. Be safe, be dangerous, and I'll see y'all on Discord. Peace. I will bring an IED to the truck stop bathroom just for you. That is so kind. Hold up. Damn, did we just get a troll like at the very end, like at the last minute of our video? All right, y'all. Love y'all. Be easy. Peace.